Your phone has 14% battery left. In ancient Egypt, that's not a low battery warning. That's the only thing standing between you and the rest of your life. 1 second you're mid-argument, scrolling, half listening to something you'd give anything to skip. The next, there's no carpet under you, no walls, just sand, heat, and a screen still glowing in your hand. You don't get long to figure out why, because a procession is already moving toward you. Soldiers, priests, banners catching the wind, and the only thing you're holding is a rectangle of glass that's still, somehow, lit up. To you, it's 14% battery. To them, it's fire that doesn't burn, light with no torch, a god's hand glowing without flame. The procession stops. Then it kneels. You didn't get a vote. You got a throne and a battery percentage that's already counting down. Nobody hands you a manual for being a god, so you improvise. You don't know the rituals, the language, the right way to sit on a throne built for someone who actually trained for this. But you do know how to perform confidence, stillness, the kind of energy that says, I meant to do that, even mid-trip over a robe you don't know how to wear. So the bluff works on the room. Court doesn't see panic. They see a being who doesn't explain himself. But the bluff has a price you don't clock yet. Somewhere behind you, a junior priest who actually knew the correct ascension rites gets quietly removed from the ceremony for getting the order wrong. He didn't. You did. You just outrank being corrected. You think you've cracked it, but the crowd was never the real test. At the edge of the room, one man isn't kneeling, isn't cheering, isn't buying a second of it. The high priest, watching you like a problem he hasn't solved yet. That night, a message arrives. He wants you, alone. You walk in, expecting an execution. You get a job offer instead. The high priest doesn't expose you because he doesn't need you exposed. He needs you useful. He shows you what actually runs Egypt. Not the throne, the temple, grain stores, labor, loyalty. By the height of the New Kingdom, temple estates like Karnak controlled more wealth and manpower than the crown itself. Tens of thousands of workers, hundreds of villages. Pharaohs wore the crown, priests cashed the checks. So he makes an offer. Sit still, look divine, sign what he tells you to sign. Egypt keeps running exactly the way it always has, and you get to keep breathing. It's tempting, it's safe, but your phone buzzes in your hand 11% now, and some instinct in you isn't ready to spend whatever time you have left as furniture. Before you can answer either way, a second message arrives. This one isn't from the temple. It's from Commander Senmut, who controls the garrison at the city's edge. 4,000 men who don't kneel to priests, and who have just heard their new god is in a closed room negotiating with one. You're not being recruited anymore. You're being fought over by two armies that hate each other more than they distrust you. The politics pause the second a real crisis lands on your desk. The flood's late, the granaries are thinning, and for the first time, nobody's testing you. They're asking you to actually rule. So, you do the obvious thing. Logic. Redistribute. Skip the ceremony. Solve the math. And it works. Numbers improve. The crisis eases. But nobody claps. Because what you skipped wasn't paperwork. It was the opening of the flood, the rite where the king himself is supposed to cut the dam at the Nilometer and declare the waters released in the god's name. You opened the granaries early instead, by decree, without the ceremony ever happening. To you, that's a logistics fix. To everyone watching, the flood arrived without the ritual that was supposed to cause it, which means, in their understanding of how the world works, you didn't solve the famine. You proved the gods aren't required for the Nile to rise. That's a worse problem than incompetence. Therefore, the whispers start not "the king is failing," but "the king is wrong in a way we don't have a word for yet." The high priest, who wanted you as a puppet 2 days ago, stops returning your messages. Your phone, somewhere in your pocket, is sitting at 6%. Here's what you think is coming. Exposure. Someone stands up mid-ceremony, points, and the crowd realizes the God is just a guy with a glowing rock. That's not it. Because they don't think you're a fraud anymore. They think you're real. A God who breaks pattern, solves the wrong problems the wrong way, doesn't follow the script anyone wrote for him. And an unpredictable God is the most dangerous thing a power structure built on control can have sitting on its throne. A fake they could manage, a wild card they can't. Which means every win from earlier, the bluff, the offer you didn't refuse, the crisis you solved your own way, wasn't progress. It was you, chapter by chapter, becoming too unstable for either side to let live. The temple and the garrison, who've spent this whole story working against each other, finally agree on one thing: you. And your phone is at 2%. You stage the only ending the priesthood will accept without a fight, not an execution, an ascension. A God returning to the sun the way he arrived, in light, on his own terms, on a day they get to call a miracle instead of a loss. You hold the screen up one last time, 1%, then nothing. The records mention a king who ruled less than 2 months, made no decision anyone sanctioned, and vanished without a tomb or a body. Some accounts call him blessed, some call him a warning. Nobody agrees on whether he was a god who got bored of being human or a man who got dangerously good at being a god. And somewhere under the sand, there's a phone at 0% battery, still warm, like it just finished doing something it was never built to do. Now that you know how it ends if it happened to you, if you landed in someone else's throne with nothing but what's in your pocket, how long do you actually think you'd last before the crown started ruling you back?